whatever you find to say will be great, because everything she finds is so great. And really, I love those quotes. And I love that hymn that we opened with. As we were singing it, I was thinking, someday it would be great just to have that be our whole meditation or sermon or message. Each line speaking so richly to this being a place where everyone is welcome and all these good, hopeful things can happen. Will you please join me in a prayer for illumination? Beloved God, we're grateful today that the sun is shining. Grateful for being together. Grateful for those friends we don't get to see so often. Grateful for new friends. Grateful that we have this place, this home, where all are welcome. From the floor to the rafters, we can love, and love with abandon. Thank you, God, for getting us through this week. For some of us, it's been a terrible week. We pray, God, not only for the well-being of those who are hurting, but for the eyes to see that, the wisdom to reach out in the way that someone has the best shot of letting us reach them. God, we pray that in our time here we might slow down and that you might help quiet whatever worries are lingering from last week or getting a head start into next week. Help us to be here now. We pray that you soften our hearts and open our minds. Let the words spoken become the words we need to hear as we come together from very many disparate places, meeting for this luscious moment, this awesome moment, and then going out again to our many disparate places. Nurture us, feed us, sustain us now for the week or the months or the year to come until we meet again. We pray these things in your many holy names. Amen. So, I was a little tempted to ask what news stories had maybe caught your imagination or had stuck out for you this week. But then the more I thought about it, I was just going to ask people, just shout it out. What's the news story that's right on top of your mind? And then I thought, you know what, let's not go there. I had visions of us crawling out of here, immediately after the service, maybe at announcement time, just trying to get it back home. So instead, I'm just going to share the ones that stuck out in my mind. Lucky you. This is just the privilege of the pulpit, I guess. So I wonder, how many of you, did you hear about the couple who found a bottle in the ocean near Corpus Christi? Nobody. Okay. All right. Did you hear that? Okay. So this is about a couple who, they collect things on the beach. They collect glass. They collect sea glass. They collect interesting things that the ocean coughs up. And they found a bottle that had a note with large print inside it that said, "Break this bottle." And it was corked. And the husband didn't want to break the bottle because they love these things. So he got a corkscrew. And he tried very hard, and he was eventually able to pull the cork out. And inside was a note. And the note was from the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Well, and that note was dated 1962. The note, it turned out, was part of a research project to track the migration of shrimp. This was a huge industry at the time. They threw 7,000 bottles into the water in the Gulf to see where they would land. And so the note read, "The person finding this bottle should complete the enclosed postcard and mail it at the first opportunity." Now here's the best part. A 50-cent reward will be sent for each completed return. And it closed with, "Thank you for your cooperation and interest." Now, apparently, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, even with inflation, we can imagine how things have increased. Does anyone want to take a guess what 50 cents back in 1962 would be worth today? $20. Oh, you're cheating. You know, right? Because you got the right answer. Someone said $5. That's the closest. $4.20. So you'll be glad to know that glass bottles are no longer used to study ocean currents. But the technique survives in a modern form. They use drifter buoys, and they perform much the same function now. And they have the advantage of having radio or satellite communication to talk instantaneously with the scientists on shore. So of the 7,863 bottles that were released in 1962 and 1963, the Galveston scientists reported recovering 12% of them within 30 days. So when they heard about this bottle that had turned up, they offered to give the couple the 50-cent reward. Though it would cost the lab 55 cents for a stamp and $3 to print the convenience check. Now, I know I've said this before, but when you've got a sermon on your mind, all of a sudden, you start seeing meaning everywhere. Very shortly after reading this story on CNN, I saw a New Yorker cartoon, and in our house, a New Yorker, I can't tell you, it could have been the New Yorker from 2 weeks ago or 6 years ago. They just sort of live around. But it was a couple on a deserted, on a desert island, surrounded by ocean, and a bottle washed up, and one of them has taken out the note, and they say, "It's another fish recipe." Now there was another story this week, and I bet that most of you heard of this one. The Mars Explorer, Opportunity. And you probably know that there was a really bad dust storm a while ago, and Opportunity stopped knocking. And they kept sending signals, but at some point they knew that they were going to have to give up on Opportunity. And this week, after many of their tries, they declared the rover over. Now, do you know how long Opportunity's mission was supposed to last when it was sent out to Mars? 90 days. Do you know how long it lasted?
15 years.
15 years. So these are great journeys. Great journeys that took a lot longer than expected. Great journeys that led to surprises. Great journeys that the end could never have really been predicted. And so today is our congregational meeting, our annual congregational meeting. For those of you who come once a year, you've picked the right weekend. Now, I'm guessing that probably a lot of you, like me, stayed up partying last night because it was congregational meeting eve. Whoa, that's right. Woo, get your congregational meeting on.
Gene.
And so, of course, congregational meetings going on in my mind all week, and these stories of the bottle in the ocean, the stories of the Martian rover, these stories about these journeys into uncharted territory, coming as they do this week with our congregational meeting, I, of course, had to see a connection. Now, you see, that's the great thing about constantly writing a sermon in your head. And I hope, there's no reason any of you who would like to give a sermon here some Sunday, you could do that. Just for the experience of walking around day and night with some words going over and over in your head and trying to understand them in the world you're living in today. You find all sorts of connections that you never knew existed. It is like a gift because it opens your eyes and it alerts your mind to find the connections. But I saw a connection between this old waterlogged bottle and this space rover and this church. So, of course, this ancient and this very modern juxtaposition made me think about, what was technology like in 1902? That's when this congregation organized, really in a journey that they weren't expecting. I don't know how many of you know that the origins of this congregation were not Presbyterian at all. Does anyone know what they were? I'm pretty sure it was congregational, but maybe it was Methodist. So they had dwindled down to just a small handful of folks, and a Presbyterian minister happened to come riding by. And they were sold. Do you know who was president?
Roosevelt.
Yes, Teddy Roosevelt. Wow, I am really impressed.
I know history too.
What's that?
I have a history too.
I'm sorry.
A little history.
You have a little history. Okay, so Teddy Roosevelt, do you remember one of his great, one of the quotes that he's known for?
Walk softly and
Carry a big stick.
Walk softly and carry a big stick, like everybody else. I always thought that was a comment on strength. Don't go around telling everyone how strong you are, but be ready to pull out that big stick. But then when I started looking back into 1902, I was thinking, well, the heck, that might have been the height of technology, a big stick. I did have to find out, just for fun, taking the people with the bottle and putting them back in 1902, if they had 50 cents, how much would it be worth today?
5,000.
No.
25.
Oh, $15.
$15.
I guess it hasn't really gone as crazy as we thought it would. So I feel confident in saying no one could predict what things were going to look like 117 years ago. And no one, I think, can predict what things are going to look like 117 years from now. It is common wisdom now for organizations to not even undertake a 5-year plan, because the world is just changing too quickly to be plotted. So what do we find ourselves today in these readings? of Jeremiah and of the Psalm. Cursed are those who trust in mere mortals and make mere flesh their strength, whose hearts turn away from the Lord. They shall be like a shrub in the desert and shall not see when relief comes. Sometimes we get hooked on these, hard words like cursed. But it's not so much that you are cursed, but that you will have a hard time when we trust in mere mortals and make mere flesh our strength. That is, when we count on the material, it's a caution that material things give way. So blessed are those who trust in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. They shall be like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots by the stream. It shall not fear when heat comes, and its leaves shall stay green. In the year of drought it is not anxious, and it does not cease to bear fruit. Now, at our congregational meeting that will happen in really just a few minutes, Steve will be our amazing finance committee chairperson. We'll be talking about some of the financial challenges we as a congregation will be facing. And I, over the next 12 months or so, am going to be talking about a lot of the big life opportunities we'll have before us. I'm not going to go into a lot of it and the details right now. And it's not so much that I have a plan and I know where we're going. Think of me more as opportunity, or even a bottle in the water. Hopefully, I won't get uncorked too soon. But I'll say this. I am, over this period, over this journey, going to up my own practice in trusting God. And I hope to be like a tree planted by water, still sending out roots by the stream. It shall not fear when heat comes, and its leaves shall stay green. In the year of drought it is not anxious, and it does not cease to bear fruit. So when I think of those roots, I think about this congregation, and I think about the long history of this congregation. Way, way long ago, pastors whose names we never even know or hear, congregants, finance chair people, fellowship chairs, whose names we don't know. And I think that is the root. Those are the roots from which we draw our strength today. It's a long history. Not well known, but we know it was there. We know it was there because we stand on those shoulders today. And that made me think, God has a long history. Depending who you ask, it could go up to like 5,700 years or so. And then I thought, love has a longer history than that. Many people all over the world describe our current state of global affairs with the word chaos. And if we look for our strength in the material, we won't find it. Perhaps chaos even comes in part from trying to find our bearings by the physical landmarks, as opposed to perhaps the landmarks of our heart. So, where do we look? And what do we do? There is so much advice today on how to live your life, how to survive the coming calamity. Lots of advice. Self-help books, YouTube videos, up the wazoo. Some think money will ensure our security. Some think security will ensure our security. But our delight, the psalmist tells us, is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. Now, this is a place where it's really easy to sort of have these words kind of drag us down, especially law, as more freewheeling, liberal religionists or spiritualists. We're not necessarily attuned to the law. But then, here's my question for you, and it is a question, anyone can answer it. What would we, in the tradition I sort of speak most from, what would we say the law of God is?
Love thy neighbor
Love thy neighbor
as thyself.
as thyself. And so that is what, Jesus said when asked, what's the most important law? The law. What is the law? He says, love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And the other is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Hillel, famous rabbi, was asked to explain the Torah while standing on one foot. He said the same thing. Love God with all you've got and your neighbor like yourself. All the rest is commentary. Jesus said all the law and prophets, basically anything you would find in any Bible ever, rests on those two commandments. So that is the delight that we take. Our delight is in the love of God, and we meditate on it day and night. So the scientists said, I don't know if this was in the article, the news you heard about Opportunity, but when they were talking about the results that were coming in, the scientists said basically Opportunity's last message to them was, my battery is low and it's getting dark. My battery is low and it's getting dark. What do I do? Delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. Now, did anyone read, don't do it now, but did anyone read the title of the message today? Was there anything that caught you about that phrase? Okay, you can look.
Reverse.
What's that?
For night instead of and night.
Exactly. For night instead of and night. And does anyone know what day for night is? Okay. Day for night is an old film technique. Back when film stock wasn't as sensitive as it would become, and they were making big Hollywood movies, they would film during the day with an extra filter to make it look like night. They're wonderful scenes. These are great movies to watch because they're out in the dark and it's suspenseful and dangerous. And the sun is the moon. The moon is rather bright. And there are a lot of moon shadows. But everyone's walking around as though it's dark. Now that came to my mind day for night because of this idea of meditating on love day and night. See, someone here, one of our beloveds, said to me recently, and I was really appreciative, they said, I can tell you feel this stuff. I can tell you connect to it. I can tell it's very moving to you, but I don't know how to get there. And so that was good. Because it's true, I do feel this stuff, as you know. And maybe we need to be more explicit about how we can get there. Well, one way is to meditate. Whether that's a whole, real, practiced meditation, or whether it's just something that we keep going over and over on our mind. And we can meditate on love. If you've got love running in and out of your mind 24/7, you'll respond to difficulties in a different way. And we can do it day and night. And it came to me to think that we can do it day for night. Because in these day for night moments, when we watch these movies, we know, oh, the story says it's scary. The story says the darkness has overcome us. The story tells us we should feel fear. But we look at this and we know that it's still daylight. And I believe when we meditate on love day and night, we kind of have that Arctic long day where the sun can never truly go down. My battery is low and it's getting dark. Sometimes my battery gets low. But my delight is in God's love, in the law of love, in love, and we can meditate on that day and night. And so, over this next, who knows how long, we'll be going on a journey. Some of us may be bottles, some of us may be rovers, some of us may be something none of us have even thought of. The thing to remember is that we don't know where it's going to end, and that is okay. And we don't know how long it's going to take, and that is okay. If we go in love. If we go together. Will you please pray with me? Beloved God, as we set out on this journey, help us to feel that water that's deep in our roots. Help us to remember that love that is always there, even when we think it's the darkest night. And help us remember that we go there together. In your many holy names we pray. Amen.